G'day gamers, Ranger Tony here, and this is my musings on the making of a master magician, or how I build a pure mage in the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. So this is going to be a quick run through, maybe, run through of how I build a mage in Skyrim. It's not going to be at this level, take this perk, because that's not really possible. Depending on what happens and the random nature of the game, you may or may not have the necessary levels to put perk points into things at given points. I'm going to talk to you though about how I do the build in general, the race that I pick, the standing stones that I use, and the skills and how I level them and how useful I feel they are, etc. So let's dive on in with the race. Now, the classic, the classic race that everyone says you should take if you play a mage, a pure mage, is Altma, High Elf. And this is because they get a bonus to Magicka, and they get bonuses to most of the magical skills. Let me address the skills first. Doesn't matter. The magic skills in Skyrim are different from the magic skills in previous games, but they're also different from the melee skills. Okay, so with one of the melee skills, two-handed sword, one-handed sword, archery, with any of those skills, as you raise your level in those skills, you do more damage with those weapons. That's not how the magic skills work. You do not get more damage or more effectiveness by raising the skill. And in the previous game, Elder Scrolls IV Oblivion, for example, you did have a slight reduction in the amount of magicka that you needed to cast those spells as you went up in level. You do not get that in Skyrim. So the only advantage you have to picking a race that has bonuses in some of the magic skills is that you can allocate perk points a little bit sooner, potentially, and buy spells, higher level spells, potentially a little bit sooner. But having said that, the first skill point that you can take in any of those magic skills, you can get at any time because the requirement is so low for it. It's only like a 10 or whatever it is that you need to have. You don't need to have 20 or 25 to get that skill. So there isn't a huge advantage to picking a race that has bonuses to magic skills. Okay, so I said the first race everyone goes for is High Elf. So the High Elf, or Altma, they are the most gifted in the arcane arts. They have the Highborn ability to regenerate magicka quickly, and they get a bonus of 50 points to magicka. Now, yes, those bonus 50 points will be a little bit useful early in the game because you are going to have very little magicka, relatively speaking. If you're careful, you can get through battles with whatever magicka you've got. But you do have to be aware that early in this build, you're not going to have unlimited magicka, so you are going to have to be really careful with how you do it. I tend not to pick High Elf because they are sort of the bad guys. I don't want to spoil anything, but there is a group called the Thalmor who several years, I think it might even be like 10 years or so before the events of the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim, they waged war on the Empire and actually won and implied some pretty harsh penalties on the Empire. One of those being the outlaw of Talos worship, which is huge in Skyrim and central to a lot of the plot lines that happen in the game. So I tend not to pick High Elf for that reason. Probably the second best mage race is the Breton. They have a bonus to magic resistance, which is their main advantage. They start with a 25% resistance to magic, which means a quarter of all magical damage you just ignore. That is really good early game, but as you will see in the build that I'm showing, you don't need it ultimately, because you can get there without using that. But to be honest, I pick Breton more often than not if I want to play a mage. You also have your once-a-day skill called Dragon Skin, which allows you to absorb magicka from spells cast at you for 60 seconds. I tend to forget about it most of the time and not use it, even though it is quite useful. So they're the two classical races that people pick when they want to play a pure mage. Now, like Dark Elf, for example, has the highest bonus to destruction magic, so some people would pick that. But as I said, bonuses to the magic skills really don't do much for you. Dark Elf does have the ability to cast what is essentially a flame cloak once a day, so that can be useful, but you can get that spell eventually and you can cast it as often as you need. So once a day, yeah, any time I need, much better. So you don't need to go that way. Some non-traditional ones that I would recommend, probably the first is to go the stock standard Nord. Now, in my opinion, Skyrim is designed for you to be playing it as a Nord. Everybody treats you like you're a Nord. There is a lot of bigotry in this game. There are a lot of people putting down the other races and things like that. And just the general subtext of the game is that the only people who live in Skyrim are the Nords. Everybody else who is not a Nord has just, after they were born, moved to Skyrim. It's not like, I'm a third generation Redguard living in Skyrim. That there's an assumption in a lot of stuff in the game that doesn't happen. So the reason I would pick Nord is for their cold resistance. Now, you will find that a lot of opponents in Skyrim will use cold-based attacks against you. You have a few creatures that do it, but in particular, a lot of Draugr, if they cast spells, they will only cast frost spells, ice spells against you. And the majority of mages that you come across will use cold-based, ice-based magic against you. So having this 50% resistance to cold is really, really good. But, as I said, if you have the magic resistance that we're going to end up with in this build, it's not such a big deal. Early game, yes. Late game, no. So that's the other one that I would really pick. Here's two that are a little bit left field. Orc, because their Berserker Rage is, well, first of all, they have a bonus to Enchanting, and that probably is the one magic skill that having a bonus to would be useful for, because you do want to, it does increase the power of the enchantment at the higher level. And we're going to be using a lot of Enchanting in this build, so there is a slight bonus there. But Berserker Rage has two components. It allows you to do double physical damage, but it also allows you to take half damage. Now, that half damage is what we want because that applies to any damage, including magic. And so that can be really useful, but it's another once-a-day skill. If you want a race that's really out of left field for this build, go Imperial. And it's purely for anywhere gold coins might be found, Imperial's seen to find a few more, because we do want money. You're going to want some coin in this build, and I'm going to tell you how to get that. So that's that. I'm going to come out of this now. I can't. I've got to... All right, let's go to our actual build, and I'll show you what I've done. We'll start talking about skills now. This character is level 30, and they are basically a god at this point. But let's talk about the magic skills. I'm going to leave alchemy for the moment and just talk illusion, conjuration, destruction, restoration, and alteration, and then I'll come back and talk alchemy and enchanting later. All right? So, illusion, I find, is pretty much useless. It has a handful of support spells. They are not really spells that you're going to want to use mid-combat. But, I mean, I think there is a paralysis rune that might be in illusion if it's not restoration. I can't remember which one it's in. There's a poison rune and there's a paralysis rune. Maybe the poison one is in illusion. But generally speaking, it's things like muffle. It's things like which makes you more quiet. It's things like invisibility, stuff like that. And I don't really find it very useful. So even if you use it in your build, I don't recommend putting any perk points into it. Conjuration. Now, there are a lot of people that love conjuration, and I'm not one of them, I have to say. As you can see here, I have not leveled it up really at all. The problem with conjuration is twofold. There is this thing in the game where everybody talks about the two bad types of magic are Daedra worship and necromancy. And they're both conjuration. In fact, that's really all conjuration is. You're either conjuring, you're either raising undead in conjuration, or you are summoning or conjuring a Daedric being or entity or object. So even if you're using the spells to conjure a sword or a dagger or an axe or a bow, they're Daedric weapons that you're summoning. If you are like the first summoning spell you get is a spirit wolf, but it's essentially the implication is it's coming from oblivion. It is a Daedric being. Later on, you summon Atronachs. These are, if you're used to playing Dungeons and Dragons, these are basically elementals, but they too are Daedric beings. They come from oblivion. So that's what the conjuration skill is all about. And you'll hear people telling you that, you know, necromancy is outlawed. Daedra worship, you'll find the vigilance of Stendar walking around saying that, you know, we are looking for Daedric worshippers. That's what conjuration is. But the biggest problem I have with conjuration as a skill, particularly definitely for a pure mage, is that when you cast a conjuration spell and summon, say, a fire Atronach or whatever, you can't rely on that to defeat all of your enemies. You are going to have to use something like destruction as well, or a weapon or something to back up that summoned creature. Yes, later on you can summon a second at a time, but it's still it will take a very long time for you to get to the point where your summons are strong enough and you can get enough of them out that you can just sit back and do nothing in a battle and let them take care of everything. It's very, very hard to get to that point, and I tend to find it's not very satisfying. I'm going to skip destruction because destruction is the primary skill we're going to be using, so I'll talk about that a little bit more. Restoration is something that you will want to use. Like, you could challenge yourself and you could say, I'm not going to use restoration and I'm only going to rely on potions to heal. But frankly, restoration is a simple way to heal. That's its main purpose. It also has wards. Wards are useful. They act as a shield against both magic and physical attack, but really don't use them if someone's in your face trying to hit you. They're really only useful because they're not as good as a shield to, deflect a blow. You're still going to take damage when you've got that ward up. And quite frankly, it doesn't matter whether you're playing a mage or any other sort of build. The game, in my opinion, is balanced such that you should not really play defensively. There are too many times when you've got too many opponents around you, and the only way to survive is to dish out more damage than you're receiving, and as quickly as possible. So I tend to find wards are less useful, mostly because you've got to switch between the ward and another spell. You can, yes, have a ward in one hand and, say, a destruction spell in the other, but it gets complicated, so I don't tend to use them. I probably should practice with them more, but yeah. Restoration, you are going to want to put some perk points. As you can see here, I've put perk points in the first skill, which half magic for novice spells, and then definitely you're going to want regeneration. And Necromage, not so much. I'm pretty sure that this skill here, Respite, so that also heals stamina. Not as useful for this build because you're not going to need stamina. Eventually having dual casting is going to be good, and you're not going to want the magical regeneration, so just stick with, if you do need to, maybe get Apprentice Restoration, maybe Adept, but I don't think you're going to need much beyond that, because once you've got the Apprentice Heal spell, that's going to be enough to heal you most of the time. So you're not going to need to put a lot of points in here, and as you can see, I'm at level 30, and I've got 5 points to spare. I didn't always have points to spare, but you will get to a point where you don't need them anymore. I could have put some more in Destruction. We'll talk about that in a minute. Alteration. This is, even though it says Alteration, it's basically your shielding. Yes, you can do Paralysis and you can do Water Breathing, and there's a couple of other spells. But basically, this is your armor spells, what they call flesh spells. So it starts with Oak Flesh, then you have Stone Flesh, Iron Flesh, Steel Flesh, and Ebony Flesh. You are going to want to put points in here as soon as you can get them. Be aware that dual casting doesn't make the spell more powerful for a flesh spell. You don't get more armor out of the spell, but it lasts longer. All right. So you are going to want Apprentice Alteration so that your second level, the Stone Skin, costs you less. Once you get up to here, and you can start taking the magic resistance and the mage armor perk points, definitely take them. So these perk points give you 2 times 2.5, and then finally 3 times the protection from your flesh spells. And then over here, your magic resistance, where it blocks 20%, 30%. No, sorry, 10%, 20%, and 30%. And so if you were a Breton, that would be 55% of magicka blocked straight away without anything else done. So that would be really, really useful. So definitely take those. Yeah, Destruction. Destruction is going to be your main spells that you're going to be using, and unfortunately it levels slower than anything else because you're meant to be using it a lot. There are 3 streams of damage essentially in Destruction. There is fire, there is frost, and there is shock. You can specialize like I have done here, where I've put perk points just into augmented flames and not into frost and shock. That only saves you some perk points. It doesn't have any other effect, but you are going to want these augmented abilities as soon as you can get them. I think the first one you get is at like level 30, and then you get the second point at level 50, I believe. No, 60. There it is. So you are going to want those. Now, other things that are useful is impact. Once you get dual casting, and I would not go for dual casting as soon as you can get it, because you can get it very early, but be aware that it does 2.2 times the damage, but costs 2.5 times the magicka. So it's really not worth it. But once we've done our little enchanting trick that we're going to talk about in a minute, you'll definitely want to get it then, and you will then want to go and get impact. This is good. This is what you really want, because being able to stagger an opponent who's at a distance means that they're not going to get close enough to you to be a problem. So if you are finding that you're having problems and you don't yet have the enchanting to do everything that you want to do, get dual casting and get impact as soon as you can, so that you can stagger your opponents. And you will go through more magicka, but it will help. The stagger will really help. Now, Rune Master is optional. I do tend to like it. I do use runes as often as I remember to, and so being able to cast them a lot further away is really useful. You can drop a rune down as an opponent is approaching you, and really hit them quite hard. And the fact is, runes do a lot of damage. So I've had situations where I've been in combat and I've just been dropping runes in front of an opponent that's right in front of me, because it's doing more damage than whatever other spells that I've got at the time. So there's that. Now, I talked a little bit about the different specializing in the magics, but let's just talk about them a little bit more. Flames, you start the game with a flame spell. It is fairly versatile, doesn't do as much damage as shock, but it's a good all-round ability to take if you want to use flame spells. The shock spells are actually my favorite. I prefer the shock spells because they do damage to magicka, and that will mean that if you're up against a mage, you take them down quicker. And the thing that I love the most about this is, and this is something that not everybody realizes, the dragons in Skyrim, they use magicka to fly. So if you use enough shock-based spells at them while they're flying around, they will crash land in the ground and not be able to fly. And they actually leave a massive furrow in the ground when they crash. I love that they put that ability in. It is so immersive. It's so nice. So that's why I like shock, basically. I can shoot dragons out of the sky, and it does pretty good damage. It does use more magicka, but eventually that's not going to be a problem. Frost. No. Don't use it. The problem is that when we talked earlier about the fact that, a Nord gets 50% damage resistance, guess how many opponents you come across in the game are Nords? And not only that, there is a large percentage of opponents in Skyrim, in the game, that are completely 100% immune to frost. There is only maybe 1 or 2 creatures that are immune to fire or shock, but there are a lot, and they include things that you wouldn't expect. All of the dwarven machines, whether it's the little spiders, whether it's the ball guys, whether it's the big walking guys, they are all 100% immune to frost. You do 0 damage, even when you throw a massive ice spike at them and it pierces their body and is sticking out of their head. 0 damage. Technically, if you want to play as an ice mage, you can finish the main quest line, but you have to avoid some enemies. So, as I said, dwarven automatons. So when you go down to get the Elder Scroll from Blackreach, just run past every dwarven construct you see. High-level vampires, 100% immune to frost, so do not do the Dawnguard questline. I believe some Falmer are immune. Definitely things like frost wraiths and things like that are immune as well. So it is really, really hard to play the game if you want to just specialize in frost and not, like, if you give yourself a challenge and say, I'm not going to use anything but frost. I've done it. I've got through the main quest line doing that on master level difficulty, but you are in for a world of hurt because you have to just run past some enemies, and it's not fun. And then there's actually a bunch of spells that were introduced in. I've been trying to talk about things at the base level here, but if you've got the anniversary edition, which most people will at this point, there are some spells that were added in the anniversary edition in the destruction tree, these elemental spells, and they do a combination of fire, shock, and frost damage. They cost more magicka, but they do a little bit of each type of damage. They are definitely the better spells if you want to just be a generalist as far as a destruction mage goes, right? And in that case, you would want to be putting points into all of these augment frost, fire, and shock, all right? I haven't done that because when I've been doing this playthrough to set everything up for this video, I was just using flames. And then as far as these next abilities up here, these, some of them are good, some of them are bad. You notice I haven't taken Intense Flames. That's because it causes opponents to flee if their health is low. Now, two things about that. One, if their health is low, they're not going to be alive for very much longer anyway. So in general, they're probably not going to flee very far. But I just hate the mechanism in games of having opponents run away from me because I have to then chase them down, right? Deep Freeze paralyzes targets if their health is low. It's okay, but as I said, there's so many opponents that are just 100% immune to frost that I've never taken that. Disintegrate is great. Disintegrate a target if their health is low. The only thing that gets annoying is you'll disintegrate a dragon, and if we talk about the example I mentioned before, I've shot a dragon out of the sky, he's crash landed and left a massive furrow, and then I kill him on the spot. Sometimes it's really hard to find his body because there is no body. There's just a small spot of ash on the ground that you've got to try and find in amongst this big furrow in the dirt. But I generally do take a point in Disintegrate. Now, you'll also notice that I haven't taken anything beyond Adept Destruction. Yeah, with this build you won't need to. So those are the main perks. You're definitely going to concentrate on Destruction. You may even, and I would recommend this at certain points, I've done it in this build, go and purchase levels in Destruction because it does take a while to level up, and if you want to get access to those extra spells, those next level spells, you're going to want to do it. And I'll be honest, so you start off in fire spells in particular. The first spell that you get is Flames, and then you get Firebolt. Firebolt is nowhere near as good as Fireball. And when you're just using Firebolt, even though Fireball does less than 20% extra damage, 20%, less than 50%, it doesn't do double the damage of that because that would be, 74 points rather than 60 points. The fact of the matter is that it just feels, when you're using Firebolt, it feels like it's a bit of a struggle, and then you get Fireball and suddenly everything seems so much easier. Now, partly that'll be because Fireball is doing damage in a 15-foot radius, which means that if you're fighting a group of enemies, multiple of them are taking damage, not just the one that you're fighting. So that tends to make some of the combat a little bit easier. But the fact of the matter is, yeah, you might want to purchase levels if you're doing that to try and get high enough levels so that you can buy Fireball. But be aware that this build, you're going to want your money for another thing, and we'll talk about that now. And that is the next skill, Enchanting. Now, you'll notice that my Enchanting is, well, it's essentially at 100%, and I mistakenly drank a potion rather than storing it I was putting some potions away and I drank one rather than storing it. But I'm at 100% enchanting, and that's what you want to get. And you want to get to that as soon as possible. Why is that? Well, what I've got here, this is something that you couldn't do in previous games, and it's something that I'm not sure everybody really appreciates. I didn't. When I first started playing Skyrim, I didn't appreciate that I could do this. And that's why I really didn't play mages, because the first couple of times I tried to play a mage, I was just struggling all the time. How do I get enough magicka to cast my spells? And it's the same problem that you had in Oblivion, right? You either have to use lower level spells all the time and spam them like mad to get through combat, or you use higher level spells and they just chew up your magicka so quickly that you're just chugging potions endlessly to try and get your magicka back. So you can use enchanting to just forget about magicka. So the enchantments that affect your magic abilities, unlike, say, in Oblivion, where if you did a fortify destruction, it would, I'm pretty sure, would have made the destruction spells do more damage. And that's what, in Skyrim, if I use, say, fortify two-handed, and I put that enchantment on something, that will make my two-handed weapon do more damage. And so if you're doing any sort of physical damage build, one-handed, two-handed archery, you're going to want to enchant up a set of gear that does fortify whatever that weapon type is, one-handed, two-handed archery. And that will just give you more damage, and that's really, really good. It doesn't do that for the magic abilities. What it does is reduce the magicka cost. Okay? And so what we have here is some items that we have destruction fortification on. Now, if you're playing the default Skyrim, not the anniversary edition, you will be able to enchant 4 items: a necklace, a ring, a hood, and some robes. If you've got the anniversary edition, go to Solitude, and when you walk through the gate, the first shop on your right is the Radiant Raiment, right? That is the clothing shop. In there are 2 new items. One of them is called the Captain's Boots. The other is called the Bosun's Shoes. Both of those are the only footwear in the game that can take the fortify magic skills. So fortify destruction, fortify conjuration, illusion, restoration, alteration. Normally, you can't put those enchantments on boots, on your feet. You have to only put them on head, body, ring, and necklace. But those are special, and so they give me an extra. So what this is with those 5 items set at that level, I now have 100% reduction of the magicka cost to cast destruction spells. So if we come back and have a look at our magic tab, you may have noticed this when I looked at my destruction spells before, the cost over there all shows 0. None of these spells cost magicka. If I get out the flames spell, my magicka bar is not going down, right? Whereas if I was to cast a healing spell, my magicka has gone down, but it is not going down casting, and it doesn't matter what destruction spell I choose. I can choose, Flame Cloak here, for example. Cost me nothing. As soon as you've got that, and you should be able to get that when your enchanting skill is around level 70. And you're going to want to take these perk points. So you're going to want to put as many points into the enchanting as you can to get the enchantments up, right? And then you're going to want to take the skill enchantments are 25% stronger. That is exactly what you need to get your fortify destruction, because that's one of your skills. This one is not really important at this point, but it then allows you, once you get to 100, to take extra effect, and I'm going to talk about that in a second. But you should be at level 70 enchanting, and I think I got this around about level 20 at character levels. And as soon as you do that, the game is easy, because you don't have to hold back. You can cast your destruction spells unlimited. All right? So that is what you're aiming for with this build, is to get to that point. How do you do it? You just enchant everything you can. So anytime you go through any sort of dungeon or whatever, look for clothing items. Particularly boots are really useful. But hats, clothes. Now you can do this with armor as well, but you can sell the clothes, the boots, and that back to other mages, and that's the really important thing. If you enchant a piece of armor, a mage won't buy it, but if you enchant a ring or a necklace or a hat, gloves, robes, shirts, boots, anything that's not armor, you can sell it back to another mage, and you can buy more soul gems. Because what you're going to want to do is go to them and buy filled soul gems of whatever type you can. Don't go nuts with the grand soul gems. You want them, but you want to use them for you. You don't want to use grand soul gems on something that you're just going to sell. Okay? Now, you're not going to make money. You're going to lose money in this proposition. It's going to cost you to do this. You don't expect to enchant a pair of boots, for example, and then sell them for more than it costs you to purchase the soul gem. It's not going to happen. Well, look, it might. You could potentially throw some perk points into speech and maybe get some bonuses there, but I never do. It doesn't seem to be worthwhile. So that's up to you whether you want to do that, because as you can see, we're not, like, I'm at level 30. I don't have 10 or 15 perk points free to use. I've only got 5, and quite frankly, if I had have gone down the route of using the elemental spells, then I would have 0. I don't have enough yet to take that disintegrate, but I would take disintegrate as soon as I could. So I really don't have a lot spare as far as, and I really need to be putting another point into apprentice restoration to reduce the cost of my healing. So look, that's it. I got no spell, I got no perk points left. So yeah, and that's the other thing I suppose that I really should mention. You don't have to spend the perk point when you level up. If you're not sure where you want to put it yet, or you know that you want to do something like, I want to concentrate on enchanting, and it's not urgent that I put a point somewhere else, don't spend it yet. If you're waiting to get the next level of enchanter, and you're at level 4, and you know you only need, you're enchanting 79, and you need to get to 80, don't spend the point. Wait, as soon as you get to 80, go in and take it. Bang, you're done. So don't feel you have to use your spells, your perk points, as soon as you get them, right? So yeah, the idea is you're going to go and you're going to take every spare every spare gold piece you have, and you're going to go around to the mages that are in each of the main keeps. There is a mage who is advising the Jarl, right? And you've got all the mages at the College of Winterhold. So if you go to any of the if you go to any of the the cities, if you want to call them that, and you go and see these mages, you're going to want to talk to them, and you're going to want to buy all of the soul gems that they have got that are filled, and then you're going to want to take them, and you're going to want to enchant things. Right, so under his misc, he's got 3 common souls, he's got 1 grand, he's got 1 greater, and he's got 2 petty. You know, if I didn't already have a level 100, I would buy as many of those as I could. And my recommendation is buy the lowest level first. So start with petty, then buy all the lessers that you can, and then buy all the commons that you can, and then buy all the graders, and then if you need to, start buying grands. But at the price that grands are, at 1260, you know, you're going to need a lot of money to buy many of them. So that's that. And then you're going to want to enchant the items that you've got. And once you've enchanted them, you can sell some of them back to guys like Farengar there, and buy more soul gems, right? You are going to want to go and do some adventuring in between all of this, because adventuring is a good way to make money. And I suppose the other thing I haven't mentioned is, if you've got the anniversary edition, go and get me a watch. If you haven't, consider buying a house in one of the cities. It's going to slow things down for you a little bit, but you need somewhere where you've got an enchanting bench. Easy access. In most of the advisors, the mages who advise the Jarls, have an enchanting bench near them, so that you can use that. But yeah, otherwise, come here and get me a watch. It is hard to get because you have to kill a God, name is not Skeever, the bugs. Yeah, you got to kill one of them, and I hate them. Hang on, Taurus. There's a Taurus outside, and you've got to kill them to get in. But there's also a lot of stuff that you can loot in here, including there are some soul gems. There's also this staff enchanting table, and there's 2 staves that you can enchant, which I've already done, and enchanting a staff gives you a couple of levels in enchanting, so you want to do that. My actual recommendation, the easiest way to get, because you're going to need to find an enchantment that's really easy to put on things. There's no difficulty in doing it, but finding an enchantment that can go onto something that's really simple to get. And I find boots. Boots are the really easy thing, because you can also go in Solitude to the Radiant Raiment and buy a whole bunch of boots. And I'm not talking the captain's boots. I'm just talking general boots and shoes, right? They're cheap. You buy them all, you put an enchantment on them, and then you sell them. And White River Watch. It's right here near Whiterun. It's a very easy early level dungeon to do. Go through that, and the last guy that you fight has some gauntlets that give a bonus to 2-handed weapons, so fortify 2-handed. You take the enchantment off that, you learn that, and then that's what you put on the boots, because that does go onto boots normally. And it's simple to find that enchantment, and it's really easy to use. Yes, you can get fortify destruction very easily, but that goes onto shirts. It doesn't go into boots, and I tend to find that I find a lot of boots. That doesn't mean that I don't enchant, shirts and hoods and stuff like that and hats when I find them, and I will put fortify destruction on them. But I find the best thing to go onto boots is fortify 2-handed, and it's really easy to find. Conversely, fortify archery and fortify 1-handed enchantments are actually kind of hard to find in the game. Okay, so once you've got that level 70, you've now got this gear on that allows you to cast spells, cast destruction spells unlimited. You're all set, aren't you? Well, you can do one better. And let's have a look at that. And that's this set of armor that I've got here. Right? So, this set of gear. So let's take... I won't bother taking the backpack. And let's just put that away, that away, that away, that away, that away, and let's put these on instead. Now, these are just ragged robes, so they look kind of silly, but I like the fact that I look like a hobo, but I'm the most powerful mage around. This gear has been enchanted with my 100 level, so I get the extra effect, so I can put 2 enchantments on things. So what have I done? Well, most of my gear, I have fortify destruction and fortify alteration, so now my flesh spells cost nothing because I've done both of those. The other effect that I've put on is I have put on resist magic. All right, so my resist magic is at the maximum at the moment. Now, you don't get a total effect here, but I've got 25% of fortify alteration on 4 items, so that's 100% alteration. I've got 25% fortify destruction on 4 items, that's 100% destruction. And then I've got my 20% resist magic from the fact that I am a... No, that is from the alteration perk point. I have a necklace that gives me another 25%, and I have a ring that gives me 25%. That is 70% total. And if I was a... Excuse me, if I was a Breton, that would be... It would have another 25% on top of that, which would be 100, but it actually can't because the maximum is 85%. And I've got another 25% here from the Lordstone, and I haven't mentioned that yet, but I will in a second. So by combining enchantments like this, I can now cast my flesh spells, or my alteration magic, and my destruction magic as much as I want, and I've got the highest possible magic resistance. Now, rather than putting resist magic on those items, I could have put fortify restoration and been 50% restoration fortification. That would have meant that my healing spells would cost only 50%. Or, if you did want to go down the route of using wards, like I mentioned earlier, if you had 100% fortify destruction and 100% fortify restoration, and then 50% fortify alteration, your flesh spells would cost half, so that, you only need those before combat. That's the thing. The alteration spells you don't really use in combat. Generally, you set yourself up before combat, put on your your iron flesh, steel flesh, ebony flesh, whatever you're using, and that protects you while you're in combat, and then while you're in combat, you are throwing around destruction. Well, this way you could have 100% destruction, yes, but also 100% restoration, so that you could cast wards continuously as needed, and then throw out destruction spells when there's a break in combat, and that would be a way that you could do that. Having said that, though, you still want to be careful with that, because if someone gets into melee range, the wards are not going to be 100% effective. You are still going to take damage. You still can die pretty easily. So that's that. Now, there is one more skill that I haven't talked about yet, and that's Alchemy. And if we come over here and have a look, you'll notice that my Alchemy is at 66. So I've actually been leveling Alchemy. Why? The money. That's purely it. Right? Now, I haven't put any points into Alchemy to make the potions more effective or anything like that. I could have, but it doesn't drastically... It does improve the cost of them a little bit, but here's the problem. Early game, some of the potions that you can create can be worth a lot of money, and you actually struggle to find anyone who can buy the potions from you because they're worth so much. So be really careful with that. But basically what I do is, on the trip from Helgen down to the Guardian Stones, And I'll mention the Guardian Stones now. So when I first get there, yes, I take the Mage Stone, right? And then I come down to Riverwood. On that trip down there, I pick up every little bit of alchemy stuff that I can find along the way. Every mushroom, every flower, every butterfly that I see, you name it, I do it. Now, there is a river going through here. It doesn't show very well on this map. There are two places between the Guardian Stone and Riverwood where there are little waterfalls, and you will see salmon trying to jump. Use either your flames or your shock and hit them as they're jumping up the waterfall. They will fall down and die and land in the water, and you will be able to pick them up. And when you pick them up, you will get salmon roe. Sometimes you will see the salmon roe, the little orange dots floating down the river. Grab them. And then more importantly, on the way from Riverwood to Whiterun, there's another couple of places down here on the river where you can also do that. Salmon roe is a really good reagent, and mixed with garlic and Nordic barnacles, and there are 8 Nordic barnacles in the pool in the front of Dragon Reach. So jump in the pool, make sure you find all 8. There's 1 on the side wall, and there's 7 down on the floor. Some of them are a little hard to see, but there are 8. Just don't drown while you're doing it. And if you want to get even more later on, along this coastline along here, you will find quite a few. But it's a big trek, and it's pretty dangerous, so be careful doing it. There's lots of other places where you can find both salmon that are jumping up, and you can find Nordic barnacles. Garlic is fairly easy to find. You can find it pretty well everywhere. But the other thing that I do is most of the major cities, Whiterun, Markarth, Solitude, Morthal, Dawnstar, Windhelm, and Riften all have alchemists in them. Oh, well, Falkreath does as well. And a lot of those alchemists, you can actually go and you can do a mission for them. In the case of Dragon's Reach, you go and see Farengar and ask him if he's the only wizard in town, and he says he has a mission where he wants you to give some frost salts to, I forget her name, and you give it to the alchemist, and she gives you free reign to look around her shop. And so there's a lot of items you can just then pick up for free. It's kind of, it's a weird mechanic, but it works, right? Just be careful. There is some stuff that if you pick it up, it'll be classed as stealing. But you can basically get a whole bunch of alchemy ingredients by doing the missions for the alchemists in the major cities. So definitely in Whiterun, in Markarth, you go and speak to the alchemist, and she wants you to go and deliver a, well, what I think is essentially Viagra potion to the steward in the Understone Keep, and then you can come back and you can loot her place. In Solitude, you talk to the alchemist, and she wants to find out about her daughter who's joined the army. You go and talk to the guard captain in the castle, and he will tell you that she was killed. You go back, and you can then raid her one. The one in Dawnstar actually requires quite a mission, so you might not do that one, as does the one in Windhelm. And the one in Riften, I can't remember what the mission is on that one, but definitely those 3 around there are really easy to do the missions on, and you can come back like several days later and they will have restocked all that stuff, and you can take a lot of it again. So that's a really easy way to get all of your gear. Once you've got all of your ingredients, there are several websites. Just search for Skyrim potion recipes. You will find several websites around, and they allow you to put in tick off all of the ingredients that you currently have on you, and they will show you the potions in order to make that make the most money. Now, a lot of these potions are part good and part bad, so you wouldn't actually want to use them yourself, because if you did, you would, get some negative effect. Sometimes you lose health, sometimes you lose magicka, lots of different things. But they're potions that you can sell. And you just go around to all the alchemists and the general stores. Unfortunately, the mages won't buy them, but the alchemists and the general stores will buy them. And you can sell the potions to them. From the general stores, you can buy filled soul gems as well. And you can do all of that. Now, having said that about filled soul gems, you can fill your own. You can buy empty soul gems and you can go around and fill them. I don't find that to be worthwhile to do, because most of the animals that you see around in the game, you look at them and you go, a bear. Yeah, I'd expect a bear to be at least a common soul, if not a greater. No, a bear is a lesser. Most of, wolves and foxes and all that stuff, they're all petty. There's actually very few things that give you, like, greater souls. And that's things like mammoths and giants. The only thing that give you grand souls are people. Even Falmer, which are almost people, they only give common souls. So it's really hard to go around and find creatures that can give you sufficiently decent. If you want to just go and buy petty or lesser soul gems and fill them, that's fine. But don't buy anything more than that, because you're going to waste the soul gem. You can put a petty soul in a grand soul gem, and it's an absolute waste. All right. So yeah, that's it. That's the main way that I make money. Is I pick up alchemy ingredients wherever I can find them, and then I'll do a run of making potions using one of these websites to. And as you go through, you put in you make as many of those potions as you can, and then you'll run out of an ingredient, and you untick that item, and it gives you the next best potion. And you go and make all of those potions until you run out of one or more of those ingredients, and you untick those items, and you just go through until you've got no ingredients left. And then while you're adventuring, you just casually pick up more ingredients again. And you can, even if you want to, you can go to one of the alchemy stores and buy some ingredients if you think it's going to help. It's debatable as to whether you get them for good enough money, but maybe, I don't know. I haven't really tried that. I've done it a little bit, but not really tried to work out whether it's the best way to do it all. But yeah, that's how I build a mage. I suppose the other thing to talk about is, well, actually, I was mentioning the standing stones, wasn't I? So yes, when I first start, I go to the Guardian Stone and I pick the Mage Stone. There's 3 stones there. There's the Mage Stone, there's the Warrior Stone, and there's the Thief Stone, and they all give you bonuses to the relevant skills. But the better stone as a mage is the Lord Stone. The Lord Stone gives you, as we saw here a moment ago, the Lord Stone gives us a 50 points of damage reduction. So it's like we're wearing 50 points of armor for nothing, and we get 25% magic resistance. You can get this very early on. I'll even show it to you what it looks like in the area. The only thing to be aware of is that there are some bandits in the area. All right. When the first time you go there in particular, there may be bandits there this time as well. But the first time you go there, there will be bandits. And there is again. Oh, hello there. I should have put one of my... actually, I couldn't have put my armor spells on initially. Alright. I probably should have paused. The first thing I did, rather than attacking, should have been to put my flesh spell on, but it still worked out reasonably well. So yes, you want to come here and get this. Just the easiest way is to take a carriage to Dawnstar, follow the path down here, past this a giant lair here. Just ignore that, just stick to the path, and you get to a point here where there's some rocks on the side of the road with a path that leads to the Hall of the Vigilant. Follow that, but then there's like a second path over to the north of that, which comes up the side of the mountain here, past Dim Hollow Crypt, and then up and around to here. And the path comes up over there. That's the altar to, I think, Molag Ball there. But the path comes up and around, and then you just follow it around this way, and you take on the bandits, and you take that stone. And I find that really useful, because if I look now, my armor is an armor rating on 50, and I don't even have a flesh spell yet. And if I go and, cast my current flesh spell, which is steel, iron flesh. If we have a look now, my armor is at 250. So yeah, that's pretty good, particularly for a mage. And I don't even have the full... Oh, it's a bear down there. I don't even have the full levels in that alteration perk that increases that. So yeah, so that's it. That is pretty much all I wanted to say, I think. Was there anything else? Let's see in the skill. Oh yes, that's right. Initially, level up Magicka, right? And get to about 200. You may feel like you want more than that, but I feel once I get to a Magicka of 200, I start raising my health, because your health will start at 100. And it can be a little bit tricky to survive with only 100 health, depending on the skill level that you pick. Now, I can do this all the way through to Master. I don't play on Legendary, but I can do this at Master level difficulty without a problem, right? And then, really, once you get to about 200 Magicka, because you're going to get to that point eventually where you don't really need Magicka, don't bother leveling it anymore. Just level up health from then on. And that will do you. You can survive like that. And that is how I build a mage in the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. So I hope this has been useful to some people. I know this is not exactly a new game. There's probably already plenty of videos out here that talk about this, but I've been playing mage characters recently, and I felt I wanted to make sure that I had this recorded for posterity and anyone else who wants to do this. Maybe you've tried playing a mage before, but you just never went down this path of setting up enchanting right so that you fortify your spells so that you just don't have to use Magicka anymore. I think it's a great way to do it. Yes, there are other ways to get around it. I've played a blood mage before. I've done the just level your Magicka as much as possible and use fortify Magicka enchantments and stuff like that. No, not worth it. Just do fortify destruction and you'll never have to worry about casting a destruction spell again. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you find this useful. If you did, comment down below, etc. Thanks a lot, and I'll see you next time. Bye now.